Slash would become well known not just for his guitar playing in Guns N' Roses, but his penchant for drinking and drugs. Well, life would catch up with Slash and resulted in doctors telling the guitarist that he had either 6 days to 6 weeks to live. That's what we're going to explore in today's video. Slash would leave Guns N' Roses in 1996, and despite leaving his fractured relationship with Axl Rose behind for nearly 2 decades, it did little to curb his drinking and drug use. The guitarist would admit to David Letterman in 2007 while promoting his book that he was drinking nearly half a gallon of vodka a day, then he would go out and drink more with friends. Add drugs into the equation and well, you can see where we're going. By the time Slash was 35, it was now 2001, and he was playing in the second incarnation of his band named Slash's Snake Pit. Slash had a new album out at the time called Ain't Life Grand, which was put out by Koch Records, a small label that, unlike Guns N' Roses label Geffen Records, didn't really offer much touring or promotional support for the album. Koch would eventually pull support for the record, and Slash would reveal in his book how the band would frequently show up to record stores to do signings, only to notice that the stores didn't carry the album, so he had to call someone to ship boxes ahead of time. The guitarist will give an interview to Howard Stern in September of 2001, just before he was set to perform with Michael Jackson, where he alluded to his health issues while on tour, as he said here.
Are you still smoking cigarettes? When are you going to stop that? You're a health freak.
It's my last real good vice.
No, come on. Are you drinking still?
Not really.
Did you go to rehab? No. Why are you not drinking? You're legendary for drinking.
You know, there just came a point there where it just sort of came up and bit me in the ass.
You were getting sloppy.
Yeah, exactly. And so I said, all right, you know. And I spent a week in the hospital.
What hospital?
Somewhere in Pittsburgh.
And what was wrong?
It's just excess. Just leave it at that.
Like
Really?
like a Mariah Carey visit? Like
No. This was a physical. This was the real deal.
What
happened? I was in the middle of a tour, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling good, but knowing me, I just kept going and kept going. And my tour manager at the time was like, "You should go get yourself checked out." So I went to. I thought, well, I'll go to the doctor, then I'll do sound check, or I'll do sound check, then go to the doctor. And it was not going to be any big thing. So I went before sound check, and once I got in there, it was all she wrote. It was like,
really,
you're not going anywhere, man.
Really?
Wow.
And so I was on my back actually for a week in Pittsburgh and for another week in L.A. But so I got all completely cleaned out.
Guns N' Roses was the real deal. I mean, you guys didn't worry about your health. I mean, you guys drank.
Yeah, there's a mentality that you just don't have when you have that kind of a history.
Yeah.
You just don't think about what normal, your morality rate.
Slash wouldn't talk in more detail about what actually happened until 2007 when his book came out. Part of the tour Snake Pit did at the time, they would open some dates for AC/DC on their Stiff Upper Lip tour before going on to headline their own club shows. Slash would write in his book, "After the AC/DC tour, we did a headlining tour of theaters, and it was actually costing me money personally, but I didn't care. And after 2 months, Koch ditched us. As the tour wore on, I remember progressively not feeling well. In Pittsburgh, I remember thinking I should go to the hospital before sound check. My next memories were waking up 2 weeks later in a hospital bed with Perla, referring to his second wife, sitting there looking very worried. I'd suffered a cardiac myopathy. Years of overdrinking had swollen my heart to the point of rupture, to the point where it was barely strong enough to circulate blood properly. The doctors gave me 6 days to 6 weeks to live." Slash would tell Loudwire what happened next.
At the time, I just remember being concerned about how I was going to make up the dates that I canceled when I got sick in the first place. That was my biggest concern. And I managed to get through it, and I did make up the dates, so it's all good.
Wow. That's so odd to me that they would be so specific as saying 6 days.
The reality was that was one doctor's opinion. And then the other doctor wanted to do a complete heart transplant. And then the third doctor was the one that said, no, we have a way of we can work this out.
What's your mindset during that period? It feels like you're just being jerked around all these ways. They're thinking of removing your heart. Other people are saying you're going to die in less than a week.
Right. But I was pretty out of it at the time. I don't think the impact, the graveness of it really hit me at the time.
I guess that maybe is something.
I was invincible. I was like, I'll get through it, and that was it. I was just totally like, just show me what I got to do, and I'll get through it. And lo and behold, sort of did what they told me to do.
The doctors would end up installing a defibrillator to keep his heart rate steady and jump-start it in case it stopped. Slash would comment in his book how doctors were shocked at his recovery as his heart started to heal. Slash would remark in his book how the time off and sobriety had given him clarity on how dysfunctional the current incarnation of Slash's Snakepit was, pointing fingers at the members for being more interested in living the rock and roll lifestyle and being less committed to playing music. This would lead Slash to dissolving the group, but the guitarist's ex-wife Perla would tell a slightly different version of events of how the guitarist ended up in the hospital.
It wasn't, I don't know if you know the story or not, but it was a tour manager that punched him, knocked him out, and dropped him off at the hospital in Pittsburgh after he spoke to me. And I showed up, and we were there, and the doctor looked at me, and we weren't married yet at the time, and he said, I'm sorry, but he's got either 6 days, 6 weeks, or 6 months, and there's not much we can do. So we did everything that they possibly could. This was in Pittsburgh. We were there for a few weeks, and then we flew back to LA, went to another hospital. They wanted to give him a heart transplant. I'm not one to follow direction or listen to even doctors that much, to tell you the truth. And we left that hospital, went to another hospital where they gave him the defibrillator. And he was playing with Michael Jackson.
When it came time to appear with Michael Jackson during his 30th anniversary celebration, the guitarist would reveal in his book he felt a jolt to his chest, which he thought was the pyrotechnics going off near him, when in reality it was his defibrillator going off. The guitarist had failed to tell doctors that when he's on stage, his heart rate goes through the roof, and he had to have his defibrillator adjusted. In the years that followed, Slash would fall off the wagon, getting back into drinking and drugs until 2006, when he finally went to rehab, and he's been sober since. Slash would tell Kerrang! What made him finally quit, revealing, I had enough of those experiences where most people go, okay, I'm done with this. But it didn't put any fear into me whatsoever. I kept doing whatever I was doing. 2004 and 2005 was pretty bad, and finally in 2006 I was like, you know what? This isn't fun anymore. You can't recreate the initial effing buzz you had back in 1980 something. It's never going to get that good again. I slowly and surely got out, but it was really hard to get from underneath all that dependency, he'd say. This wasn't the only scare that Slash had, as 10 years prior, he would die for nearly 8 minutes. Back in 1992, Guns N' Roses would find themselves touring with Metallica, playing stadiums around North America. It was during that tour that Guns N' Roses guitarist Slash died for 8 minutes. In Slash's self-titled 2007 autobiography, he discussed meeting his first wife, Renee Saran. She was a model who had worked campaigns all over the world for some pretty big companies, and was now trying to become an actress. In his book, he would describe meeting his first wife either during 1989 or 1990 during the making of the band's Use Your Illusion records. By this point, the band was in work mode, and Slash would admit he wasn't very social, staying mostly at home and drinking and listening to records, or spending his time in the studio. It would be bassist Duff McKagan who coaxed him into coming with him one night to a bar in LA, where the pair jammed with a blues band. It was at the same bar that Duff picked up a girl who was there with a friend of hers named Renee. Renee didn't appear to show any interest in Slash, but he would write in his book, and I quote, "Any girl that was going to make my life difficult was hard to get, and that was the girl to go for in my mind. In Lemmy's infamous words, the chase is better than the catch." Within a few weeks, the pair were soon living together, and Slash would admit in his book that he liked the fact that Renee was independent and had her own life, and really had no interest in rock music or Guns N' Roses. He would reveal a typical day for the pair would be him getting up earlier than her, lying on the floor, drinking vodka and smoking cigarettes until she got up. Fast forward to the spring and summer of 1992 when Guns N' Roses were touring Europe with Faith No More and Soundgarden, and Slash would reveal by this point in time the pair had split up because he had been unfaithful to her and she had gotten wind of it. Then while the band was in England that summer, he'd call up Renee feeling lonely, wanting to reconcile, and she would fly out to see him. Slash had hoped that she would have stayed with the band on tour for that leg, but she basically gave the guitarist an ultimatum: we either get married or we're not getting back together. Slash gave in and the pair would end up getting engaged and were set to marry in October of 1992, but ahead of their nuptials, Slash wanted to protect his assets and push the idea of a prenup on her. The prenup was discussed around September 24th, 1992, according to Slash's book, when Guns N' Roses were scheduled to play Oakland with Metallica. Here's what went down according to Slash. who talked about the incident to Howard Stern during a 2001 interview.
Did you lose half of your Guns N' Roses money from the divorce?
No. I did
Prenup?
Yeah, the beginning of the end is when I said sign this prenup. I remember exactly when that was.
Good.
I was in San Francisco. Guns was touring the stadiums with Metallica.
Right.
And that phone call was made that there was going to be a prenup.
Who makes that call? You
that
do?
was me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
You don't have an accountant who
and
does
that was one of the biggest fights in our entire relationship over the phone.
Really?
And
She was like, well, if you really love me,
well, don't even get into it. You know
the drill.
I can imagine.
And so he doesn't know. It stressed
I
me
wish
out.
I had known that, Drill.
It stressed me out so bad that after the show was over, I ran into the wrong people at the wrong time after the gig. Ended up in the hospital, messing around. Because I was so depressed from the whole argument that I ended up ODing that night.
Why did you go through with a marriage?
Wait a second.
So-
you said to your girlfriend, listen, I want a prenuptial agreement. She got into an argument with you, so you went out and OD'd?
Basically.
Wow.
And then,
But then you got up
I had a
and
gig
married
the
her.
next.
Slash would end up collapsing in the hallway of the hotel and would be taken care of by the band's security team until the paramedics arrived. He would write in his book, "I woke up when the defibrillator sent an electric shock through my chest and stunned my heart into beating again. It was like being slapped in the face hard enough to wake you up from a deep sleep." Slash was then taken to a local hospital where he was told to stay the night for observations, admitting in his book that after a couple of hours he signed himself out and went back to the hotel, writing, "I had no remorse whatsoever about my overdose, but I was pissed off at myself for having died." It was shortly after the incident that a band meeting was called where Axl told his guitarist, "You gave me a scare. We thought you were dead. I thought I'd have to look for a new guitar player." Years later, the BBC would publish a documentary on Guns N' Roses called The Most Dangerous Band in the World. And according to A&R man Tom Zutaut, who discovered Guns N' Roses and signed the band to Geffen Records, he claimed that after the overdose that Axl thought a different Slash took over his body, revealing Axl genuinely believes the soul of Saul Hudson, Slash's legal name, left his body when Slash overdosed. That was the greatest stumbling block to getting the band back together, he would claim. Slash, for his part, would end up marrying Renee a month later, and it appeared the prenup was signed as Slash would admit to Howard Stern that an agreement had been reached during a 1995 interview. Slash would write in his book about getting married for the first time, "We definitely didn't do it small. It was this really big production that I had very little to do with. My only memories of planning it involved Renee showing me an endless number of books full of gifts to pick out. I couldn't relate to any of it, and my lack of interest made her very upset." Slash would admit in his book that ahead of getting married, Renee wanted the pair to have a co-ed bachelorette party so she could keep an eye on him. Slash, earlier in 1992, during a show in Vegas, had met the woman who would become his future second wife, Perla Farrar. Perla would show up at Slash's co-ed bachelor party. Here's what the guitarist had tell Howard Stern during a 2007 interview.
Did you have sex with an old girlfriend the night before your wedding? What happened there? Were you scared to get married? Was that it? And you just said, "Hey, shit, I gotta get out of this thing."
The first marriage I got into was an ultimatum,
Right.
and I don't think I went in the right. I didn't go into it from the heart, and so I'd sort of dated the girl that is now my wife.
Right.
Not really dated, but we saw each other on occasion, and we always had a good time. And she knew that. She knew that we had sort of a connection.
Is this the wife when you were doing my movie you were hanging out with?
That's the one that I was married to then.
Right.
Yeah.
You
That was
divorced
the first
her.
one.
Yeah, I divorced
She
her.
was hot.
She was a good-looking girl. But anyway, so what happened was Perla heard that I was getting married. Actually, she came to my bachelor party,
Right.
which was a co-ed bachelor party because what I was saying was so
worst kind of bachelor party.
I called my girlfriend up. I called my girlfriend up, who was going to be my wife,
Right.
and I said, "Let's get back together." And she said, "Not unless we get married." And I was like, "Oh."
So you had to do it.
And so then we did it, and Perla, who'd known me from previous, came around and said, "Ha ha," and then somehow we ended up doing it the night before my wedding.
Beautiful.
The wedding was
ho-ho.
the wedding was doomed from that point on. The marriage was doomed, But I feel really bad because I actually put her through something. I'm not into hurting people's feelings for being.
Slash and Renee would end up divorcing in 1997 after 5 years of marriage, and 4 years later he'd marry Perla, and the couple would divorce 13 years later in 2014, just before Guns N' Roses got back together. Some sources have claimed that Perla not being involved with Slash anymore because she was also his manager may have led to a Guns N' Roses reunion or had some part to play in it. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe. We'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.